Never took the plastic off this. There we go. So as we typically will do.
That's a satisfying sound.
Yeah. As we'll typically do with new graphics card reviews, if you guys didn't see my video about this, it wasn't so much a review of the card as it was more of a review of the reason why the card exists. And it's titled My Salty Review of the RTX 3060. So some of you might find it interesting. But what we typically do when we get a new card is we always test its overclock ability. And one of the things I like about this card is it's not one of the super expensive, extremely ridiculously marked up $500+ 3060 cards. Imagine $500 plus for a 3060. Anyway, this is a $389 XC Black from EVGA. It's got no frills, no lights or nothing. Let's see if we can overclock this to anywhere near a 3060 Ti level of performance. The all-new 5000D mid-tower airflow case from Corsair features an optimized front panel for maximum ventilation, while the integrated cable management and tempered glass side panel means you can show off more of your components and not your cable mess. To see the full list of specs and to learn more about the 5000D's flexible fan mounting options perfect for both air cooling and water cooling enthusiasts, follow the sponsored link in the description below. All right, so let's talk about the cooling aspect. Whether or not your card can overclock is gonna not just depend on the silicon quality or the silicon lottery, or whether or not you've got one that likes to allow its frequencies to go farther on the same amount of voltage. The cooling aspect of it matters. Now the cooler that's on this XC Black is the same cooler you'd pretty much find on a 3060 Ti, which has more CUDA cores, has more tensor cores, more RT cores, more power. And so when you take a cooler like this from a higher tiered card and you place it on one that's a little bit lower, the nice thing is you're gonna have beefier cooling than you actually need. One thing to talk about though, this fan, these fans, I guess, what looks like I'm holding a VHS tape, which is actually fairly close to the actual dimensions of a VHS tape. And I have no doubt someone watching this video right now just went, what's a VHS tape? But what it allows you to have here is at least more cooling than you need for the die that's on here. Even though it's rather barely existent, EVGA is still doing the blow-through design even on the 3060s. Totally unnecessary, but hey, there it is. But it's a dual fan, which means that we're gonna have lots of thermal capacity in terms of the heatsink that's on here with its 4 copper heat pipes and its 2 downdraft fans, or what they call dual axial fans, yeah, because they're on an axis. I think it should do pretty well. Now remember, when you overclock graphics cards these days, you have no control over the voltage. What you have control over is the voltage percentage at which it'll apply full voltage on the scale. So what does that mean? Right now, if by default, we're just using some arbitrary numbers. If we were running 1750 megahertz, the default curve calls for about 80% of its max voltage. We could make it pull 100% of its max voltage at that frequency, which means potentially more stability as we push the clocks higher. But you're not gonna get more voltage than max. The max number, you're just pulling it down the frequency scale, that's it. So that's the other thing that really holds you back when it comes to overclocking. All right, so first things first, we are running an ultra wide panel here set to 1440p resolution. So the vertical height is 1440 on this. So that's why it actually looks natively correct. Also turn off G-Sync when you're doing benchmarking because you don't want it to affect any of your results. You can leave it on when you're actually doing your gaming. A couple settings that we always like to adjust here in NVIDIA when we're going for overclocking in the control panel is come down to power management mode. Set that to prefer maximum performance. And then if you come down here to, you don't really need to do this one for texture, but you can set it to high performance or quality. We set it to high performance. I've never noticed any sort of an actual visual difference, but it does actually affect things when it comes to your scores and stuff. You're going for like Port Royal scores or whatever. So we're gonna be using Afterburner here to do our overclocking and our fan control and such. So what I'm gonna start doing here is I'm going to max out the power limit and see if the 1912 comes up. And it didn't, which is a good sign because that means that we weren't actually power limited yet, which means that power, being probably what's gonna hold us back here, is gonna have more available to the card, which we're gonna need as we start pushing the core clock up. Push the core clock up, your power draw goes up with it. The other thing I'm gonna do right now too, just for good measure, is because we don't care about noise right now, we care about performance, we're going to max out the fan speed. But look at that, by bringing the temperatures down some already, our clock speed already came up. We went from 1915 to 1927 by doing nothing but bringing the temps down. So I'm just gonna start, well, let's see, can I add 500 to the memory on this? Let's see, and have it not crash. I'm gonna wait till the test is moving, not this part where all the lights are turning off. There we go. It looked like I clicked off the lights. Yeah. Will it go 1,000? No, it can't go 1,000. Max out the slider at 1,500. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so we'll do like 1100, call it safe there. All right, start the test again.
That's pretty nuts for...
Heck yeah, on a 60 series card doing 1250 on the RAM. Now we're gonna start playing with our offset on the core. So I'll just start at like 50. So what I'm doing is I'm just inching this up, basically 10 megahertz offset at a time. See that? Oh, 2092. I feel like instead of every 15 like the other cards, this is like every 7.
Or what if it's exactly half?
There's 200. 2122. I've never seen that number before in an NVIDIA card. 210. 2137. 2145. That's a number I would expect to see. Yeah, we are getting every 7.5. We'll see if we can get through the test that we ran for our initial salty review. And then if it passes all of them, we'll do the charts. If it fails, I'll find where it's stable. We'll still do the charts and we'll come back. All right, so we just got done doing the overclocks on this. Really didn't have to change anything. I actually brought it down 1 boost pin, that was it. It's kind of crazy. This is not a crazy, overbuilt, oversized PCB giant cooler, which in my opinion, you know, to the credit of like Asus and MSI and all them building their high-end cards, when you have like a Strix or a crazy overclocking version of a 30, it just seems like wasted money. Don't spend the extra money on that, get a next tier card. Hypothetically, if prices were all still normal. Don't spend 100 and 250 bucks, 150 extra bucks on something like a 3060 when you get a 3060 Ti for that price difference. Again, hypothetically, if pricing wasn't completely stupid right now. But this not being one of those crazy overclocking cards, and the fact that we were able to get a 200 megahertz overclock on it and maintain it through all of our testing, I know there's just a lot of numbers up here that really aren't gonna come across very well on your guys' screen, but the core clock, like this last part right here that's just super flat, this is when we were doing Rise of the Tomb Raider, or no, Shadow of the Tomb Raider with RT on, and we were staying at about 2122 megahertz the whole time, and 2100 on that last test, back up to 2122. So getting over 2100 megahertz on this card pretty much all the time. In actual games, because synthetics are different than obviously like Time Spy and Port Royal and all that, we saw the dynamic range of the boost tables obviously fluctuate around. Would drop about as low as like 2090 or so, and then as high as like 2145. It's just crazy to see though that we actually got some really good gains, as you guys could see in the charts. The synthetics it's funny, the synthetics tell a different story than the games, which is normal. Usually we would see this big spread in the synthetics where it would look like you have one card really outperforming another card synthetic, but then you put it in games and they're all much closer together. Where the 3060 card for us, when compared to the 2060 and the 3060 Ti, and the 2060 Super, if you remember on our original charts, the 2060 Super and the 3060 out of the box, again, all these cards were out of the box, were very, very close. And then in the synthetics. But then when you look at games, you saw this nice like straight line drawn on like this like 45-degree angle across all the cards, showing that in games, the extra architecture and stuff with Ampere and the extra CUDA cores and stuff actually scaled to a better performance in games. So it's almost like those have swapped now, in that synthetics make things look closer together than they actually are. But we gained like 400, 500 points in the synthetics. We were gaining anywhere from like 8 FPS to 10 FPS in games by simply moving some sliders and maxing out a fan on a card that is not even touted as being like this amazing high performance overclocking card. 1440p performance obviously was no problem whatsoever for this card, which is I mean, not surprising. You could do 1440p performance on a 2060 and 2060 Super as well. But to see it scaled even in RT performance was really nice. Not as close to the 3060 Ti as I was hoping, but the Ti is a completely different core. Now keep in mind, when we compared this on the charts, this is the only overclocked card on the charts, and all the cards overclock, similarly. You can get at least 100 megahertz in most cards, which is gonna give you also a little bit of a linear bump. Typically, if you can get a 5% overclock, you'll see about a 5% improvement in your scores and your FPS. It's really weird how it scales nearly perfectly like that. And every title is a little bit different, but we saw on this one more like an 11% overclock, and we were seeing pretty damn close to 11% improvement on our performance. So a lot of people were asking me if the card's worth getting an overclocking because they can get it and they can't get a higher tiered model. My issue with that mindset, you don't know how well the card is going to overclock. Remember, this GPU was sent to us by NVIDIA, not EVGA. EVGA sends their allocation for reviews and stuff to NVIDIA, at least in rounds like this, and then NVIDIA divvies it out. I don't believe there was any handpicked stuff going on here. EVGA always sends us retail models with serial numbers and everything on them. In fact, a lot of brands that we've received graphics cards from in the past don't even have serial numbers because they're the early pilot run of the manufacturing process. They're not cards that were going to get sold anyway. Anyone right there that may have just had an aha moment, no, reviewers are not taking allocation from the public because most of the cards that we get can't be sold anyway because they are pilot test runs for production. And then once everything's good there, then the production runs happen and those are the cards that get sold. So no, we're not stealing your cards from you, unless they're EVGA, we're taking those ones from you. But no, you don't know if the card's gonna overclock that well. Silicon lottery is still a huge factor here. We have 2060s that won't allow me to even get a plus 75, and then we are seeing very little difference there. So there you go, there's our 3060 overclocking results. That's probably the last 3060 video you're gonna see from us until we compare it to AMD's new card coming out in right around the same price range, where we're not gonna start showing you guys more 3060s. We're just gonna see how that compares to whatever AMD is announcing later on this month. So thanks for watching, guys. If you guys have any questions about the 3060, sound off in the comments down below. Maybe we'll answer it if we see it. I guess we'll see you guys in the next one. And our GPU giveaway is over. So I'm not gonna tell you guys more about that. So we'll do another one later, and I'll tell you guys about that one then.